Every family has one.
You already know who I mean before I finish describing them. The one who asks the questions nobody wants answered. The one who feels things at the wrong intensity, in the wrong moments, in ways that make everyone else in the room slightly uncomfortable. The one who notices the things sitting in the middle of the family gathering that everyone else has carefully arranged their chairs around so as not to look directly at it. They are called the dramatic one, the sensitive one, the difficult one, the one who cannot just let things go, the one who makes everything complicated when it does not need to be, the one who is always, somehow, the source of the problem, even in situations where they arrived after the problem started.
They are called the black sheep. And here is what nobody in the family will say, because saying it would require acknowledging what the family cannot afford to acknowledge.
The black sheep is not the most troubled member of the family. They are the most awake one. They are the person in the system whose nervous system has the least tolerance for the gap between what is actually happening and what the family has agreed to say is happening.
They feel the distance between those two things as a physical discomfort, a persistent, specific, unresolvable wrongness that the rest of the family either does not feel, or has learned to not feel, or has successfully buried deep enough that it no longer surfaces. And because the family system cannot look at what the black sheep is pointing at, because doing so would require the whole system to change, the system does the only other available thing. It points back at them. Today, we trace the neuroscience and the family system science behind this dynamic. Why the black sheep is created, not born. What specific neurological quality they carry that the family system cannot absorb. What it costs them. And what two independent lines of research, one from Harvard, one from a 1950s psychiatrist working with schizophrenic patients in a Maryland hospital, have now confirmed about why the most painful role in the family is also the one that carries the most capacity for the whole system to change. Let us begin with the family as a system. Not a collection of individuals, a system. Murray Bowen was a psychiatrist at the National Institute of Mental Health in the 1950s, who began his career trying to understand schizophrenia. He made a decision that at the time was considered deeply unusual. Rather than treating the diagnosed patient in isolation, he brought the entire family into the treatment environment.
He had them live in the hospital. He watched them interact for months.
What he saw changed his entire understanding of psychological dysfunction. The identified schizophrenic patient, the one with the diagnosis, the one the family had presented as the problem, was not behaving randomly or individually. They were functioning as a precise regulator of the family system's anxiety. When the broader family tension rose, the patient's symptoms increased. When the family tension decreased, the symptoms decreased. The patient was not the source of the dysfunction. They were the symptom of it. The place where the family system's accumulated unprocessed anxiety found its most visible expression. Bowen called this person the identified patient, the IP. In the decades of clinical work that followed, he and his colleagues observed the same dynamic with extraordinary consistency. In highly anxious, poorly differentiated family systems, families where there is a significant amount of inherited, unprocessed emotional material, the system unconsciously selects one member to carry the collective anxiety in a visible form. This selection is not deliberate, it is systemic. It operates through thousands of small relational transactions. The family's responses to the individual's questions, feelings, needs, and perceptions that gradually shape the identified member into the role the system needs them to occupy. The identified patient in the clinical literature is the family scapegoat, the black sheep. And the first and most important thing the research establishes is this: the role is assigned by the system, not generated by the individual.
The person did not become difficult because they were inherently difficult. They became the symptom because the system needed a symptom more than it needed the truth.
Now, here is the neuroscience of why some family members are more likely to become the identified patient than others. Jack Shonkoff, professor of child health and development at Harvard University and founding director of the Center on the Developing Child, has documented that children who grow up in environments of chronic family stress, environments where there is sustained emotional tension, unpredictability, or unresolved anxiety, develop specific neurobiological adaptations. The brain, he explains, gets wired for the threatening environment it is raised in. The threat detection system becomes heightened. The stress response becomes more reactive.
And something else develops, a perceptual sensitivity, a finely tuned awareness of emotional signals, interpersonal dynamics, and the gap between what people say and what they mean, that allows the child to track the emotional environment with exceptional precision.
This perceptual sensitivity is a survival adaptation. In a family where the emotional atmosphere is unpredictable, where the adult in the room might shift from warmth to withdrawal without apparent cause, where certain subjects produce sudden tension that nobody explains, where the emotional reality is consistently different from the official verbal account of it. Being able to read the room at a very fine grain is not sensitivity, it is intelligence. It is the precise skill the environment required.
The child who develops this skill most completely is also the child most likely to become the family's identified patient, because the same perceptual sensitivity that allows them to see what is actually happening also makes it impossible for them to participate in the family's agreement to not see it.
They cannot pretend. Not because they are morally superior, because their nervous system is calibrated to register the gap between reality and narrative as a genuine threat signal. The pretending requires them to override a constant alarm.
And at some point, usually in adolescence, usually in the context of a specific unignorable moment, they cannot override it anymore. They say the thing. They feel the thing out loud. They refuse to sit down when the system needs them to be seated.
And the family, which has organized itself around not looking at what they just named, turns to look at them instead. Here is what this costs. The Harvard Center on the Developing Child research documents that children whose brains wire for high threat sensitivity, the neurobiological adaptation of the identified patient, carry measurable long-term consequences. The same system that sharpens their perception also keeps their cortisol elevated. The same attunement that makes them perceptive also makes them harder to soothe. The threat detection system that was genuinely necessary in the original family environment keeps running in contexts that are objectively safer, flagging interpersonal signals, reading rooms, bracing for shifts that do not come. The identified patient grows up, they leave the house, and they carry in their nervous system the full wiring of a person who survived an environment of chronic family anxiety by becoming its most sensitive instrument. They are extraordinarily perceptive. They are genuinely good at seeing what is true. They are also, very frequently, exhausted. Relational hypervigilance, the constant scanning of interpersonal environments for threat, is expensive. It takes energy. It produces a specific kind of tiredness that is not fixed by sleep.
And they carry almost universally the specific wound of the black sheep, the belief installed by 1,000 tiny family transactions that being real is the same as being wrong, that their perceptions are the problem rather than the accuracy of those perceptions, that the pain they feel is evidence of their sensitivity rather than evidence of what actually happened.
The family system trained them to doubt what they know. And the tragedy is that what they know
is usually the closest thing to the truth that the system contains.
Now, let us look at 3 specific cultural versions of the black sheep dynamic. Because the surface forms it takes are different across cultures, the underlying structure is identical.
In South Asian family systems, particularly those operating under the combined pressures of immigration, intergenerational expectation, and the cultural values of collectivism and family honor, the black sheep role is often occupied by the family member who refuses to perform success.
Who does not pursue the expected career, the expected marriage, the expected public presentation of the family's worth? Who asks out loud whether the things the family is working so hard to achieve are actually what anyone wants? Who grieves what was lost in the immigration that the rest of the family has agreed to call progress?
This person is experienced as a threat not because their questions are wrong, but because the family's survival strategy is built on not asking them. The emotional cost of having left, the relationships ended, the culture abandoned, the identity fractured across 2 worlds, was paid in full by the generation that made the crossing.
The price of integration was the burial of grief. And the family member who keeps trying to dig it up is not being ungrateful. They are being accurate. They are seeing what the burial costs. And the family, which cannot afford to know the full price, calls them difficult.
In East Asian family systems with strong Confucian values of filial piety, where the hierarchy of family obligation is a central organizing principle, the black sheep is frequently the child who prioritizes their own emotional truth over their designated role in the family structure.
Who says, out loud or by their behavior, that the parents' needs do not automatically override their own? Who seeks therapy? Who sets limits? Who refuses to carry the parents' emotional regulation as a lifelong responsibility?
Who differentiates? Bowen's term, differentiation of self, is precisely the concept being enacted by this person. Differentiation, the capacity to maintain your own emotional and intellectual functioning in close contact with emotionally significant others, without either fusing with them or cutting off from them. In highly fused family systems, where the individual's identity is substantially organized by their role within the family unit, differentiation looks like betrayal. The family experiences it as abandonment. What is actually happening is one member of the system beginning to become an individual. And the system, which does not know what to do with individuals, calls it a problem. In African and African diaspora family systems, carrying the inheritance of structural trauma, enslavement, displacement, the particular psychology of communities that survived by maintaining unity, by not showing weakness to the outside world, by keeping family business internal. The black sheep is frequently the person who goes outside. Who goes to therapy? Who names the family's patterns in language imported from a professional culture that the family did not ask to enter their home? Who says, "What happened in this family is not something we should be carrying alone"? This person is often experienced as a traitor, as washing the family's dirty laundry in public, as prioritizing their individual pain over the collective dignity that the family has worked to maintain. What they are actually doing is beginning the process of processing what the family could not process, taking the buried material into contexts where it can receive the attention it was never given. They are not betraying the family. They are doing, on behalf of the family, what the family system could not do for itself. Here is what I want you to understand about the black sheep's role in a different way than you have probably been offered before. The identified patient, the black sheep, is not the family's weakest member. They are, in Bowen's clinical framework, the member with the greatest unmet drive toward differentiation, toward becoming a self as opposed to a function within the system. The pain they carry is not evidence of fragility.
It is the cost of being the one in the family whose tolerance for inauthenticity ran out first. And the research is clear about one more thing. When the identified patient begins to change, when they begin to move toward differentiation, toward becoming more fully themselves, toward reducing the systemic anxiety they have been carrying on behalf of everyone else, the family system does not simply let them go.
It escalates. It increases the pressure to return to the previous role. It deploys the full repertoire of the family's emotional technology: guilt, withdrawal, triangulation, direct criticism, appeals to loyalty, to bring the differentiating member back into the position the system needs them to occupy.
This escalation is not evidence that the change is wrong. It is, in Bowen's framework, evidence that it is working. The system escalates precisely because the change is threatening the equilibrium that required the identified patient to stay sick, to stay small, to stay the problem. The increased pressure is the system saying, "We feel you leaving. Please come back."
The answer, the difficult, necessary, incomplete answer that every black sheep who has ever started to become themselves has had to find, is, "I love you. I am not leaving, and I am not coming back to that."
If you recognize yourself as the family's identified patient, and many people watching this will, I want to offer you one reframe that the science supports fully.
Your perception is not the problem. Your perception is the data. The specific things you have seen in your family, the things you have named and been told you were wrong to name, the patterns you have identified and been called dramatic for identifying. These perceptions were produced by a nervous system of extraordinary sensitivity that was developed in an environment that required it.
You are not too much. You are precisely calibrated for what you survived. The work is not to stop perceiving. It is to stop paying the penalty for accurate perception. It is to build relationships, slowly, selectively, where what you see does not require an apology, where the room does not rearrange itself when you walk in, and the thing you might name is already there, where being accurate is not the same as being wrong. You were not the family's problem. You were the family's most honest mirror. They could not look at what you were showing them. That is not a reflection of what you were showing. It is a reflection of how much it cost them to look.
Your patterns have a paper trail. Next week on The Ancestral Glitch, the inheritance of financial scarcity, why your nervous system runs a famine warning even when the account is full.
Wait. You watched this one first because something in the title reached through the screen and found you. You already know why.